She texted me the morning of our wedding. "I'm so nervous. I love you so much. See you at the altar." I replied with 2 words. "I know." Then I drove to the venue, walked inside, and handed the DJ a USB drive. 6 hours later, 214 people watched her world end in real time. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old. I'm a structural engineer. I design the invisible parts of buildings, the bones, the load-bearing walls, the quiet infrastructure that holds everything upright while nobody thinks about it. I have always been comfortable being the thing nobody notices until it's gone. I was with Serena for 4 years before she accepted my proposal. 4 years of building something I thought was real. She was a marketing director at a mid-size agency downtown. Sharp. Funny in the specific way that makes you feel like the funniest person in the room when she laughs at your jokes. The kind of woman who made you feel chosen. I mistook that feeling for love for a long time. The imbalance was there from the beginning. I paid for almost everything. Not because she couldn't afford to contribute. She made good money. But because I offered once and she accepted permanently. The apartment, the vacations, the dinners, the gifts, the weekend trips. I told myself it was because I wanted to. I told myself I was the kind of man who provided. I told myself that love expressed through action was still love. I was wrong. What I was actually doing was funding the comfort of someone who had decided, somewhere along the way, that I was a resource. Not a person. A resource. Stable. Reliable. Invisible until needed. I didn't know the full truth until 7 weeks before the wedding. I know the exact number because I had already paid the venue deposit, $7,200, non-refundable. I had already ordered the flowers. I had already bought her ring, a custom piece I spent 4 months designing with a jeweler I found through a friend. I had skin in this game in every direction. It was a Tuesday night. She was at what she told me was a team dinner with her agency. I came home early. The project I was working on wrapped ahead of schedule. I stopped at her favorite Thai place, ordered her usual without being asked, and came home with food and that specific kind of tired happiness you feel when something hard is finally finished. She wasn't home. That wasn't unusual. I set the food on the counter, showered, sat down. Around 10:30, she texted. "Dinner ran long. Don't wait up." I replied, "Got you food. It's on the counter." She sent back a heart emoji. I went to sleep. I woke up at 2 in the morning because my phone was buzzing. A notification from an app one had never seen. Something that had auto-installed when she borrowed my phone 3 weeks earlier because her battery had died. She never mentioned it. I never noticed it. What I didn't know was this. Serena had opened a shared location app on my phone by mistake, signed into her account, instead of her own device. She realized eventually. She deleted the icon, but she didn't fully remove the background process. So for 3 weeks, I had been passively receiving her location data without knowing it. The notification woke me. I opened it, and there on a map I'd never seen was a pin showing exactly where Serena was. She was not at a restaurant. She was at the Meridian Hotel, 4 minutes from our apartment. I stared at the screen long enough for my stomach to finish its slow, silent collapse. Long enough for something very old and very quiet inside me to stop pretending. Then I got up, made coffee at 2 in the morning, sat down at the kitchen table, and started thinking. The first thing I thought was this. I need to know if this is a pattern or an incident, because those are 2 different situations requiring 2 different responses. I opened my laptop. I am an engineer. I approach problems methodically. I identify variables. I collect data before I draw conclusions. And in the weeks that followed that night, working quietly, working alone, working without saying a single word to Serena about any of it, I collected enough data to answer my question completely. It was not an incident. It was a pattern. 14 months long. The man's name doesn't matter. What matters is that he was someone she'd mentioned to me exactly once as a contact at a partner agency. Someone who existed in my understanding of her life as a professional acquaintance with no other relevance. What he actually was a man she had been seeing regularly, intimately, for over a year, while we were engaged, while she was wearing my ring, while I was working 60-hour weeks paying our mortgage and planning a wedding. I was genuinely, stupidly, honestly excited about. I know this because she told me, not in a confession. She told me because she made the mistake that people in long-running deceptions always make eventually. She got comfortable. She used her personal laptop on our home Wi-Fi network, our shared router, which I had administrator access to. in which after that night, I began monitoring carefully. I will not describe the technical process. What I will tell you is that engineers understand systems, and homes are systems, and systems keep records. I found audio, not by looking for it specifically. She had been recording voice memos and syncing them to a shared cloud account we set up together when we first moved in, one of those early relationship infrastructure decisions you make thoughtlessly and both forget about. The memos were labeled with dates. The content of several of them removed any remaining doubt I had. I downloaded 3 of them. I put them on a USB drive. I went back to bed. For 7 weeks, I said nothing. I want you to understand what those 7 weeks looked like from the outside. From the outside, I was a man planning his wedding. I went to the venue walkthrough. I approved the catering menu. I did the suit fitting with my groomsmen. I attended the engagement party her parents threw for us at their house in the suburbs. I shook her father's hand. Her mother hugged me. I stood in their living room, surrounded by framed photographs of their daughter, and I smiled and accepted congratulations and drank their wine. Serena noticed nothing, because I gave her nothing to notice. I had made a decision, and the decision required patience. And I am by nature and by training a patient person. There were moments. There were moments when she reached for my hand across a restaurant table, and I took it without hesitation. And I felt something I can only describe as a very clean, very cold clarity. Not anger, not grief, just precision. The feeling of a person who knows exactly what they are doing and has chosen to see it through. Was that cruelty? I've been asked that since. I will address it honestly before the end. But in those moments, I didn't experience it as cruelty. I experienced it as completion. I was finishing something she had started. The wedding was a Saturday in September. 214 guests. A venue in the hills. Outside the city, an old estate with stone walls and ivy. And the kind of light that makes everyone's photographs look like they cost more than they did. Serena had chosen it. I had paid for it. It was beautiful. I will say that honestly. It was a genuinely beautiful place. And on the morning of the wedding, it looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like. I arrived before she did. I went directly to the DJ, a man named Marcus, someone I had met twice during planning, a professional who struck me both times as someone who kept his business private. I handed him the USB drive. I told him that at the moment the officiant asked for the vows, specifically, the moment she said, "Daniel, please share your vows with Serena." I needed him to play track 1 from the drive through the venue. Speakers at full volume. I told him it was a surprise. He asked if I was sure. I told him I was completely sure. He looked at me for a moment, read something in my face that told him this was not a request he should question further, and he nodded. I went and stood at the altar. My groomsmen were with me. 3 men I have known for years. None of them knew what was on that drive. Serena's bridesmaids came down first. 5 women in slate gray dresses, all of them smiling. Then the music shifted. The doors at the back of the venue opened. She was extraordinary looking. I want to say that because it's true and because I think it matters. To tell the truth completely, she was wearing a dress she had bought with her mother in New York. Her hair was pinned up in the way she wore it when she wanted to feel serious and beautiful at the same time. She was holding a small bouquet of white ranunculus. She was walking toward me with an expression I can only describe as total certainty. That is the image I will keep from that day, not what came after. That image, her walking toward me with total certainty. Certain of what she had, certain of what I was, certain of where she stood. She reached the altar. She took my hands. Her fingers were cold, nervous. She had told me that in the text, and her eyes were bright. And she looked at me with the full force of someone who has no idea what is coming. The officiant spoke. She moved through the opening language. Love and commitment and partnership. I watched Serena's face the entire time. She watched mine. She was smiling. Not a performance, actually smiling. And I thought, standing there holding her cold hands at a stone altar in the September light, that this was perhaps the most important thing I had ever learned about human beings. We see what we have decided to see, and we stop looking after that. Then the officiant said, "Daniel, please share your vows with Serena." I looked at Marcus. He pressed play. Her voice came through the speakers at full volume. Serena's voice. Unmistakable, clear, warm, and private in the way voices are when a person believes they are. Not being recorded. The recording was 43 seconds long. I know the exact length because I had listened to it approximately 24 times in the preceding weeks, not out of obsession, but out of necessity. I needed to know exactly what it contained. I needed to be certain. I needed to hear it enough times that I could stand at an altar and play it for 214 people without my hands shaking. Her voice filled the room. Her words filled the room. Words directed at someone who was not me. Specific, detailed. They removed, in 43 seconds, every single possible interpretation other than the one I had spent 7 weeks confirming. I watched her face the whole time. I watched the smile stop. I watched her eyes move. First to the speakers, processing the source. Then back to my face, reading it. Finding nothing there that gave her an exit. I watched her understand, in real time, that there was no version of this she could walk back. No explanation. No reframe. The audio was clear. The context was unmistakable. And I was standing in front of her, with the expression of a man who had made a decision and arrived at its conclusion. She said my name. Just my name. Daniel. I said nothing. I let go of her hands. I took off my boutonniere, a small white ranunculus pin to my lapel, and I set it on the altar. Then I walked off the altar, down the aisle between 214 people who were completely silent, through the doors at the back of the venue, into my car. I drove away. My phone started ringing before I reached the main road. Her mother, then her father, then 3 of her bridesmaids, then a number I didn't recognize, then her mother again. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and I drove to my friend Aaron's house, 40 minutes away, where I had placed a bag 3 days earlier. Aaron knew. He was the one person I had told, 2 weeks before the wedding, because I needed a witness and someone who could account for my whereabouts. If things became legally complicated, Aaron had sat across from me at his kitchen table, listened to everything, and at the end said 3 words. "Are you sure?" I told him I was completely sure. He said, "Okay, what do you need?" That was it. That is the entire conversation. That is what real friendship looks like, and I have not forgotten it. I stayed at Aaron's for the weekend. I did not answer calls. I did not respond to texts. I sent 1 email to my lawyer, retained 6 weeks earlier under the guise of reviewing business contracts. Because I had not wanted anyone to know I was consulting a lawyer, I told him the situation had proceeded as anticipated, that we should speak Monday morning. Monday morning, we spoke. What followed was not dramatic. It was the opposite of dramatic. It was paperwork, logistics, the quiet, efficient process of untangling for years of shared financial infrastructure. Here is what Serena did not fully account for. Our apartment was in my name exclusively. I had purchased it before we moved in together and structured it correctly, without commingling it into shared property. The car she drove daily was registered to me. The credit card she used for most personal expenses, a supplementary card on my primary account, added for convenience, was mine. The premium streaming services, the gym membership, the monthly transfer to our joint household account, all mine, all controllable, all silent until removed. I removed her from the credit card Sunday night, canceled the gym membership, removed her from the phone plan, closed the streaming access. The joint account, I transferred my portion out and left it empty. I did not tell her any of this. I made no announcement. I sent no warning. She found out the only way left, by trying to use things that no longer worked. The card went first. Monday afternoon she texted, "My card isn't working." I did not respond. She texted again, "We need to talk. Please." I did not respond. Then she sent the one I saved. The one I forwarded to my lawyer with the note, "Document this. Daniel, you can be angry, but you can't just leave me with nothing. That's not fair and you know it. Read that again slowly. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong." The first instinct, when the card stopped working, was entitlement. She had confused my consistency for obligation, my provision for debt she was owed. She had been so certain I would always be there that even after the altar, even after the audio, even after 214 witnesses, her first thought was that I still owed her something. That text told me everything. I needed to know about how clearly she had ever actually seen me. Her father called Tuesday. I answered because I had decided I would speak with him once. Briefly, and only him. He was calm. He said she was sorry. He said things were complicated. He hoped I would give her a chance to speak. I said I understood. I said I had consulted a lawyer. I said I wished him and his wife well. Then I said goodbye and did not speak to him again. That call cost me something. He was a decent man. He did not deserve to be standing in the wreckage of his daughter's decisions. I think about him sometimes. Her lawyer sent a letter Thursday. My lawyer called me after he read it. He said, "They're threatening emotional distress damages." A pause. Then, "They've played themselves." He sent one document back. No argument. No negotiation. Just the evidence. Time-stamped, organized, complete. The timeline. The recordings. The 14 months of documented conduct. And one clean legal paragraph explaining that no court would find damages. For a person whose public embarrassment was the direct result of their own recorded private behavior. At an event I had organized and fully funded. In a venue I had contracted. Their lawyer went quiet after that. No follow-up call. No second letter. Nothing. That silence told me everything about how strong their position actually was. She tried twice more. Once through a mutual friend named Claire, who texted to say Serena was struggling and wanted closure. I read that text. I put the phone down. I went back to what I was doing. And once, 3 weeks after the wedding, she texted me herself. At 11:47 p.m. I don't know what I expected. I don't know what I was doing. I keep trying to explain it to myself, and I can't. I just need you to know that what you built with me was real to me, even if I didn't treat it that way. I read it twice, put the phone face down, went back to sleep, not because I felt nothing, but because there was nothing left to say that the altar hadn't already said louder and in front of everyone who mattered. The apartment is quiet now. I have been here alone for 4 months. I changed almost nothing. The furniture, the books, the angle of the kitchen light in the late afternoon that I have always liked. The practical changes were significant, and I made them all without grief. Joint account closed. Insurance policies updated. A new parking space. Arrangement because she had been using mine and contributing nothing for it. These are not the things that take time. These are spreadsheet items. You close one column and open the next. What took time was different. What took time was removing not a person, but a version of myself. Because I had been, for 4 years, the version of Daniel who was loved by Serena, who was chosen by Serena, who had built something real enough to stand at an altar for. Losing that version of yourself is different from losing a person. It happens in smaller pieces. It takes longer. It doesn't announce itself. What I missed was not Serena. What I missed was the man I thought I was when I was with her. The man who provided and planned and built and was genuinely appreciated for all of it. That man had been a fiction, a performance for an audience of one who had stopped watching a long time ago. I grieved him quietly, and then I let him go. Here is what I know about leverage. People take things for granted not because they are bad people, but because they have never been required to imagine the absence of those things. Serena had never been required to imagine my absence. I had made myself so present, so reliable, so permanent in the architecture of her life that I had effectively removed the possibility of loss from her calculations. She stopped being careful with me not because she didn't value me, but because she had stopped being able to imagine losing me. That is an engineering problem. I should have recognized it sooner. The load-bearing wall does not announce itself. It holds everything up in silence, invisibly, without recognition. You only discover it was there when someone removes it and the ceiling comes down. I was the load-bearing wall, and walls don't leave quietly. They leave all at once, and everything they were holding comes with them. What I did that morning, handing Marcus the USB drive, was not an act of destruction. It was an act of removal. I stepped out from under the weight, and everything Serena had been resting on came down at the same moment, in the same place, in front of every person she had ever asked to witness what turned out to be a lie. I started seeing a therapist in October, not because I was broken, but because I was curious about myself. Because a man who can spend 7 weeks holding a secret like that, who can shake a woman's father's hand at an engagement party and smile and mean it on the surface, that man deserves some honest examination. I am not certain the calm I have described is entirely healthy. I am not certain that the absence of visible emotion is the same as the absence of emotion. My therapist and I are working through that. Slowly. In the same way, I approach all load-bearing structures, carefully, with respect for what might collapse if you move too fast. She is living somewhere else now. I don't know where. I heard through Aaron that she and the man from the hotel are no longer in contact. I find that unsurprising. Their connection existed inside a secret, and secrets, when fully exposed, lose their shape. I don't know what she is doing. I don't know who she is becoming. I find that I have genuinely no desire to know. My mother called me a week after the wedding. She is a careful woman, and she took a long pause before she spoke, and then she said, "Daniel, are you at peace? Not are you okay? Are you at peace?" She has always known the right question. I thought about it honestly. I said, "I will be." She said, "That's enough." I have thought about that exchange often in the months since. Whether peace is an honest destination, or just something you tell yourself to survive the distance between where you are and where you need to be. I think it is both. I think peace is honest and aspirational at the same time. And I think the work of getting there is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the same 40 minutes every morning. It is the kitchen light. It is the particular silence of an apartment where everything is exactly where you put it because you are the only person who touches anything. For years is long enough to build something real. It is also long enough to mistake comfort for love, consistency for partnership, investment for evidence of being valued. For years is long enough to get things very, very wrong. I got things wrong. Not about her. I was right about her. As it turned out, in the most complete possible way. I got things wrong about myself, about what I needed and what I was worth, and what it actually looks like when someone sees you, really sees you, versus when they have simply decided you are permanent and stopped looking. I will not make those specific mistakes again, not because I am afraid of being deceived, but because I now know what it feels like when someone has stopped seeing you. I know the texture of that invisibility, and I know that the correct response to recognizing it is not patience. It is not endurance. It is not one more year of quietly holding everything up and hoping someone notices. The correct response is removal, quietly, completely, without announcement, without argument, without giving the other person the opportunity to reframe your exit as the problem rather than their choices as the cause. The building stands until the load-bearing wall decides it is done. And then, all at once, everything resting on it has to find somewhere else to stand. Now I want to ask you something, not to make you comfortable, because the comfortable question is never the interesting one. If you had found what I found, 7 weeks before the wedding, the app, the hotel, the audio, the 14 months of documented proof, what would you have done? Would you have ended it privately? Protected her from the public consequence? Absorbed the damage alone and moved on quietly? And if you would have, ask yourself honestly, would that have been kindness? Or would it have been one more form of invisibility? One more way of making yourself smaller to protect someone who had already decided your feelings were secondary to her convenience? Because that is the question that doesn't resolve cleanly. Not whether what I did was right, but whether the private exit, the protected reputation, the quietly absorbed betrayal would have been more loving, or just more familiar, and whether in the life you are living right now, those two things are the same thing, or dangerously different.